Hi everyone, welcome to Communispond's webinar, 5 Things to Look For When Choosing a Virtual Instructor-Led Training Program. It can be overwhelming when having to analyze virtual instructor-led training programs. There are so many options available and it's hard to know what to even be looking for to narrow the search pool. So, to help, we've compiled a list of the top 5 things to look for when choosing the best virtual instructor-led training program. My name is Jessica Brown, and I'm excited to be your host today. Before we get started, I'm just going to cover a few items. We are recording today's session. Following the conclusion of the webinar, you will receive an email with a link to the recording and the slides. We will also be projecting our webcams. So if you don't see our streaming webcams currently, just expand the Participants tab in the upper right portion of your screen. And lastly, we are very interested in your questions. There's a Q&A icon in the upper right portion of your screen, so please select that icon to submit your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll answer as many as we can towards the end. Now, before I introduce you to the presenters, I want to quickly introduce you to Communispond if this is your first time joining us. Communispond has been a leader in professional skills training for 49 years. Communispond offers training in 6 key areas: presentation skills, writing skills, interpersonal communication skills, and business skills. And Communispond has a strong global presence with 12 offices worldwide, over 75 global faculty, and delivering programs in over 19 different languages. Now I'd like to welcome today's presenters, Carol Baynard-Ewan and Wayne Turmel. Carol, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jessica. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm the VP of Products and Services here at Communispond, and as such, I've been intimately involved in figuring out how we can effectively create virtual ILT programs to add to our repertoire.
Thank you, Carol. And we also have Wayne presenting today. Wayne is a longtime Communispond faculty member and an expert in communication and presentation skills, particularly as they apply to the online world. Wayne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Welcome from Chicago. I am thrilled to be here today to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart. But I guess before we get started talking about the subject, we should probably define exactly what it is we're talking about. So when we talk about VILT, what is that exactly? It's actually an acronym for Virtual Instructor-Led Training, which is different than a webinar. What we're on today is a webinar. I wouldn't consider what we're doing training. So what is exactly a virtual instructor-led training? Well, the first thing is that it is live training. It's synchronous, it's in the moment. What's different is that the instructor and the learners are in different locations. And we're communicating through internet technology. And we all know that those are things like webcams. And there are a ton of programs out there that can be used. We're going to use one of our programs as a simple example along with the platform that we use, but it's only an example. So before we get started, let's find out a little bit about you so I know where to kind of begin the conversation. So we're going to ask you this question. Have you ever participated in a virtual instructor-led training class before? And remember, we're talking about interactive, synchronous training, not a webinar one-to-many. So this is an actual learning experience that's interactive that you've participated in. So we're going to give you a minute or so to just answer that. In the meantime, let me remind you that Carol and I do want to take your questions. This can be a fairly complex topic, and so we're going to talk generally and use our own specific examples, but we'd love to address your specific concerns at the end of the program. So Jess, how we doing?
Looks like most of the answers have come in. I'll give it just a couple more seconds, and then I'm going to close the poll and share the results. Okay, it looks like it's slowing down, so I'm going to close it.
Okay, and it's probably going to take a few
And
seconds for WebEx to cooperate.
yes, and I will share them with everyone.
Okay, so this is kind of interesting because what we found is that the majority of you have, in fact, taken part in a class before. That's actually a change. 2 years ago, when I was speaking at the ATV conference, nearly half of the people who were asked to design or present virtual instructor-led training had actually never taken part in one before. So the ground is changing a little bit, and that's good to know. So most of you are familiar with it. You know, one of the interesting things is that we then need to kind of talk about what's the advantage over co-located training. And it does have some advantages. First and foremost is money, right? It's more convenient and cost-effective than getting everybody to a central location, and it eliminates the need for travel. It's more convenient as well because people can, in fact, be at their desk when they're working. So that's an advantage over co-located training. And people say, well, why don't we just go strictly to e-learning then if we're going to have people at their desk? But e-learning is a little bit different. E-learning is self-paced. Participants are primarily learning one-on-one interacting with a computer rather than a live person. And this matters because what we find is that BILT is more engaging than e-learning. It's hard for learners to stay engaged for more than a short period of time when they're just interacting with a screen. Most people prefer actually to learn from other human beings. Now, because so many of you have participated in BILT classes before, let me ask you a really important question, and this frames today's conversation, which is based on your experience, and that can be as a learner or as a facilitator. Based on your experience, has BILT been more effective than co-located training, just as effective, less effective, or you're not sure? And if you have not participated, if you're one of those people who hasn't participated in training like that before, what does your gut tell you? So we'll give you just a moment to do that. Remind you once again, please use the Q&A tab. Carol and I are eager to get down into whatever you require.
Looks like they're still coming in, Wayne, so just give it a couple more seconds.
Great. And remember, if you haven't participated before, you probably have a gut feeling for, is it just as good, not as good? That's important.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share it with you all.
Not really surprising, actually, that we've got a wide variety of opinions. Nobody thinks that it's more effective. A few of you, about 26%, say that it's as effective, and most of you, to one degree or another, have some pretty serious doubts. And that's not all that surprising, really. It's kind of important that we know that we obviously believe that BILT can be as effective as co-located training, even for things like soft skills, but it needs to be done right. Given the advantage of BILT and the fact that so many companies are trying to enter the space and there's a lot of noise, you're probably here because you're looking for some guidance. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you the top 5 things to look for when choosing a virtual instructor-led training for yourself or for your company. And so we're going to start, oddly enough, with number 1. Carol, what's the first thing people should look for?
My apologies, I was on mute. The first criteria that we suggest that you look for when choosing a BILT program is choosing a program that's easy to access. And Wayne, why don't you show us an example of that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to use one of our programs as an example. It's really important that it be a simple process for the learners. So the first thing you need is a portal to your virtual instructor-led training that's easy to navigate. This is the example we're using is our EPS Anywhere, our presentation skills program. It's a browser-based program that is really simple. You simply go to a URL, in our case, communisponddigital.com. It's browser-based, so you don't have apps to download and things to mess with your firewall, and then you simply log in. You've got a username and a password. You've got a program, which program are you going to use, and it may or may not be password protected. But the important thing is that it's a browser-based program, it's easy to join, and you select the program. So it needs to be simple, it needs to be user-friendly. So Carol, what's next?
So the next thing we recommend when looking for a VILT program is choosing a program that's highly engaging and well-paced. And Wayne's going to talk a little bit more about that now.
This sounds obvious, but one of the things, particularly in the early days of VILT, is that people were more concerned with the constraints than the basics of good learning. We know that in a physical classroom, participants can get bored and tune out, and that situation gets even worse when you're online. You know, the instructor can't bust you, nobody else can see you switch to playing Minesweeper. So in a virtual classroom, it's easy for participants to lose focus. You know, we answer our email, we start chatting, we surf the web, all kinds of things. Some of you are right now putting us on mute and answering your email. So it's vital that participants be constantly engaged. Now, for EPS Anywhere and for the Communispond Virtual Instructor-Led Training Program, one of the ways we counteract that is through choosing a platform which is designed for maximum engagement. In our case, we use the Jigsaw meeting platform. And we chose Jigsaw simply because it has a lot of engagement tools. And for those of you who haven't participated in the class, there's multiple ways to interact. So let's take a look at all of that. So Jess, if you'll share, this is just a screenshot of Jigsaw. There are a lot of platforms out there, but let me tell you about some of these tools.
And Wayne, actually, before you walk everyone through the layout of our program, I just wanted to jump in and mention that I will actually be sending out a link to a video that will actually give you a tour, a live tour that will show each of the panes in action. So that will also be going out in the email that you get this afternoon with the link to the recording and also the slides. Okay, back to you, Wayne. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much, Jessica. So let's take a look at the first pane, if you will, and this one plays to the visual component of learning. Participants can see the instructor and each other. One of the reasons we use webcams in our webinars, one of the reasons you can see me today, which I know, is a mixed blessing, but the fact is that people want to see each other. We connect and we learn better when we're connected to the people we're dealing with. So you can see the number of people, you can see everybody in the class, you can see just the instructor or just the active speaker. But neurologically, we're programmed to want to see each other. Also in this screen, the instructor can play recorded videos. A lot of platforms struggle with that. We do it in the classroom. Sometimes it's hard to do online. But you want to be able to play live video at the time. Now, the second pane is the one we're all familiar with. It's kind of the one you're looking at now. If there is a PowerPoint presentation or a Prezi presentation or whatever you're using, or you have a visual, something that you're sharing on the screen, this is where it is. And as with WebEx, you can use your arrow tools, you can use your annotation tools, stuff like that. So that's pretty straightforward. The third screen is for taking notes. Now, for some of us who are old school, and I am addicted to my little notepads and my writing things, but a lot of people want to take notes on screen. You can also take notes for the entire class, so group notes. That kind of interaction, asking people to be the note taker, for example, is a way of engaging people. The fact that the notes are there visually engages them. It's important on a number of levels. The fourth pane is essentially a spot for a whiteboard, just like a flip chart in a class. You can also show job aids. Participants can view their own video. That's a feature pretty unique to Jigsaw, but depending on the type of class you're doing, that's an important thing. Also, because this screen has live links, you can go to places on the web. You can go to your evaluation forums. So that screen is different than the one above it by virtue of its interactivity. In pane 5, you can see who you're working with, and you can control your own webcam and microphone. The instructor can control the webcam and microphone. You know, it's a live participant list, but again, people want to know who they're interacting with. And then on pane 6, that's your chat, and that's, of course, both public and private. And one of the things that we learn in doing virtual instructor-led training is chat is often underappreciated. A lot of people limit the use of chat because they think it's a distraction or it distracts the instructor, but in fact, it's another modality for communication and becomes very useful for people with English as a second language or for your introverts who maybe aren't as confident speaking out. So chat, public chat, is important, as is the ability to chat with the instructor and the technical assistant, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then the final pane, pane 7, is downloading attachments like the workbook or handouts. And of course, you can control when those handouts are handed out, when people have access to them, which helps time the learning. So if we think about all the ways that we interact in a classroom, you want a virtual instructor-led training class, and for that matter, a platform that allows you to engage in as many ways as possible and emulate what we know as training professionals actually works. So, you know, it's one thing to have the tools and the platform, and the program has to be designed to maximize the tools at your disposal. So, you know, fatigue is a factor, attention span is a factor, so it's really important that the course be well timed. And again, we're going to use, because it's kind of a unique program, we're going to use our EPS Anywhere as an example. Because the classroom training is 2 full days, the online version is a day and a half, which can be pretty taxing for participants. But you'll see, first of all, that there's a full day 1 and half a day 2. That's broken up into 2 sessions, a morning session and an afternoon session, with a good, healthy lunch break in between. But even the half-day sessions are broken up into 3 modules each, with breaks in between. Those breaks are crucial because people cannot focus as effectively online as they can in the classroom, and they have more distractions. Their email's pinging off, their instant messenger is blowing up, and there's just the issue of staring at a screen all day long. So the program has to be divided in such a way that it gives people not only something to engage with, but a chance to disengage, clear their brain, and refocus. So that's the second thing, is it needs to be well designed and engaging. Carol, what's the third thing that people need to look for?
So the third criteria we recommend you look for is choosing a VILT program that has individual recording and playback. And Wayne, do you want to talk a little bit about why that's important, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And this, of course, is specific to certain programs, right? Not every classroom program we teach has recording and playback, but in those classes where it matters, presentation skills, sales training, coaching where role play and those sorts of things are important, video recording and playback is essential to helping people see and hear themselves as their audience or the person that they're working with sees and hears them. And this awareness is what drives the behavior change. Earlier, I mentioned that in the Jigsaw platform, instructors can record participants in pane 1, and participants can actually watch their videos in the pane at the bottom right. And Jessica's going to show what a recording looks like when the student privately watches their recording in pane 4. So Jessica, we're going to play about 40 seconds or so of an actual video. Okay, so that's just a simple example. You've all been in a presentation skills class, right? You've seen that before, and that's important if your training is going to be effective. This allows participants to assess themselves. It allows others in the class to offer feedback, and of course, in the moment coaching from the instructor. Again, if you're worried that virtual instructor-led training can't be as effective in the classroom, you're eliminating those examples. So, Carol, what's the fourth thing that people need to look for when evaluating a VILT?
So the fourth criteria we recommend you choose is that these programs are taught by highly trained and experienced facilitators. And I'd like to elaborate a little bit on that. You need a facilitator that understands facilitating in a traditional co-located classroom and also one who can facilitate in a virtual environment. And they have to be able to demonstrate the skills and model them. And that's a pretty unique set of skills. Not all facilitators can do that. So here's how we certify our facilitators using, again, that example of EPS Anywhere. First, we certify them in our co-located program, Executive Presentation Skills. They begin by participating in the program. Then they spend 3 days with the master trainer learning how to manage the classroom, model the skills, and coach the participants. Finally, they co-teach once as an assistant and a second time as a lead. Now they're certified in the co-located executive presentation skills. Next, we would certify them in EPS Anywhere. Once again, they begin by participating so that they get a feel, what is it like to participate in that virtual environment? Then, 3 days with the master trainer again. In this case, they're learning to manage a virtual classroom. They're learning to coach virtually. They're learning how to record someone at the same time. There's a lot more going on in that virtual classroom. They co-teach as an assistant, and then finally, they co-teach as a lead. And that certification process is what makes them be really good, whether they're in a co-located situation or in a virtual situation.
So it's really important, Carol, that the instructors, and this is vital in any VILT, that the instructor be both a subject matter expert and comfortable teaching and facilitating in the virtual environment. You know, one or the other is not enough. So that's really, really crucial. What's the fifth and final thing that you want people to look for?
So the fifth criteria that we think is super, super important is choosing a VILT program that has dedicated technical support. And Wayne, with all of your years of experience of delivering on a virtual platform, I think you have plenty of war stories about this one.
Oh, more than I get. Actually, a fun fact, we were talking before the class, or before this webinar, and realized that I delivered my first webinar in 2002. So for 16 years, I've been doing that. And so the one thing that we have learned, and Jess, you can move to the next slide, there you go, is that you have to have dedicated technical support available, because the technology is what's going to make or break this. If it throws the instructor off, obviously that's a problem. And if it's a barrier to the learner's learning, that's a big problem. So you need technical support before the session. If people are struggling to log on, if they log on late, if they're feeling frustrated and angry, before the learning even happens, you've created barriers to their success. During the session, you want people to be able to focus on the learning, the exercises, the interaction, and not be hung up on the technology. So if something happens, can they quickly troubleshoot it? And then after the session, do people have what they need, and can they find what they need in order to make that work? It's really important that they're able to do that, and the instructor needs to be able to have their head in the game, right? It's almost impossible to troubleshoot, read chat requests for help, teach your class right on the whiteboard. The analogy that we always use is if you're driving late at night in the driving rain looking for an address, and you have to turn down the radio so you can see better. It's very difficult to be successful in that environment. That's why you need somebody whose job is to handle that stuff so that the learning can effectively take place. So, you know, that's the 5 things. Carol, why don't you summarize those for us? I know that we're going to have some questions, and we look forward to that. But why don't you run a quick review of the 5 criteria?
Thanks, Wayne. So again, the very first criteria we recommend that you look for is a VILT program that's easy to access. Secondly, we feel that it should be highly engaging and well-paced. The third criteria, one that allows individual recording and playback, and ideally you want that playback to be immediate. The fourth criteria, make sure it's taught by highly trained and experienced facilitators. And finally, make sure it has dedicated technical support so that the user experience is absolutely flawless all the way through. But I want to slip in a 6th criteria. Of course I do. Everybody who knows me knows I like to talk.
That's just greedy.
So let's talk about a 6th criteria. We believe that you should choose a VILT program that is offered by a company with a proven track record that guarantees results, like Communispond. So we've been in business since 1969. We've helped over 800,000 people learn to be better communicators. Now that you know these criteria and what to look for when you're looking for a VILT program, I'd like to introduce a little bit more about EPS Anywhere, which is our VILT public speaking program. It meets all 6 of these criteria, and it's an effective, efficient, and engaging program. In this visual, you see 3 panes. The gentleman on the left is speaking to a large group, the woman in the middle to a small group seated around a table, and the woman on the right is in a one-on-one conversation with an individual. All of these are presentations and opportunities for public speaking. Since 1969, thousands of professionals have participated in executive presentation skills. This flagship product in the co-located version is a 2-day program, and it helps business people develop, create, and deliver persuasive presentations. So again, that's the co-located program. But what about the program that is in the VILT environment? So we took that flagship product of ours and we moved it so that it was a combination of executive presentation skills anywhere, and that virtual environment. And Jess, you might want to advance the slide for me. There we go. So the public speaking program and VILT became EPS Anywhere. We've offered this virtual program now for almost 3 years. It covers the same skills as our co-located executive presentation skills, but everyone's in a different location. Sometimes they're on different continents. They use their computer to participate via Jigsaw. They get recorded, and it is synchronous with a live facilitator. So Wayne, could you take just a couple minutes and talk about how participants learn in EPS Anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this goes back to the poll we took earlier about people unsure about, how effective VILT is versus classroom training. So let's take a look at what we know works, right? So it starts with self-awareness in presentation skills and a lot of other soft skills training. There's some kind of self-assessment, in our case, video. You do a baseline recording. That's really important. People have to understand, what do I do now? What does the audience see and hear? And whether we are online with EPS Anywhere or in the classroom, that process doesn't change. It allows video recording and instant playback. Then we take a look at learning new skills, right? There's a lecture, a demonstration. In the classroom, online, doesn't matter. That process takes place. People learn new skills, but learning the new skills, knowing what you're supposed to do, doesn't help unless, of course, you're allowed to do what? And that's actually practice the skill. This is where a lot of VILT falls short, and where it's important that we give people a chance to actually try the skills. Interaction, discussion, role play, exercises, often videotape and self-videotape. But that practice is really important in developing any skill. And then it's one thing to practice the skill, but do they get coaching and feedback on it? And EPS Anywhere, as a good classroom training does, allows for in-the-moment instructor coaching as well as peer feedback, that interaction, that camaraderie, that instant course correction that allows people to make really powerful, positive behavior change. And then once the class is over, so what, right? What do we do with it? And that's where reinforcement comes in very handy. In the case of this program, as with so many, there are various tools. There's what we call Learn Tos, which are short video reminders about specific skills, and people can access them through the same portal that they joined the class. There are tip cards, there are reminders. So EPS Anywhere has been designed to mirror what we know over 50 almost years in the classroom and transfer it to the virtual area, which is where people's concern is with VILT, is does it work, right? And people have been surprised how well it works, and we've actually been a little pleasantly surprised by how well it's been received. Participants are amazed at how they're able to become more powerful presenters while not having to make the schlep to the classroom. And here you're looking at just some comments. I want you to notice, though, the barriers to VILT are usually technological and social. Well, with the first one, they loved the virtual program. It worked. The technology didn't get in the way of the learning. The second bullet, they were skeptical about, is it going to work at all? And when they find it working, when they find, dare we say it, themselves having fun and interacting with people and forgetting about the fact that they're not there, it's actually very, very effective. And at the end of the day, that effectiveness is what we want in a virtual learning environment. So Jessica now is going to tell you a little bit more about how to learn more about EPS and how to tell if this is a good match for your company.
Thank you, Wayne. Yes, if you have any questions or would like to experience our flagship virtual instructor-led program, EPS Anywhere, you can contact Communispond at communispond.com/contact, and the link is displayed up on your screen. And if you do decide that EPS Anywhere is the right fit for you or your organization, we offer 2 enrollment options. We offer open enrollment options and corporate enrollment options. Open enrollment programs are best for individuals. Up to 12 individuals from different organizations are able to attend EPS Anywhere at any of the predefined times. The upcoming dates are up on your screen, and you'll be able to find information on all of our programs by going to communispond.com and selecting the Public Seminars tab in the upper right portion of your screen. Now, if your organization is interested in enrolling multiple people for EPS Anywhere, the corporate enrollment option would be the best option for you. We would set up programs at times that are convenient for you and your organization. Now, if you're wondering about the cost of the program, the cost of an open enrollment program is typically $1,550 per participant, but we are actually having a limited time promotion going on through the end of the month where you can save $100 on any VILT open enrollment seminar with promo code webinar100. And if you're interested in a corporate enrollment program, you can find out what the cost would be by reaching out to someone at Communispond. And again, you can fill out the Contact Us form on our website for someone to reach out to you. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Wayne and Carol to answer the questions that came in during the webinar. So let me pull up the first one.
And just a reminder, Jess, there's still time for people to get those questions in, so use the Q&A box.
Absolutely. The first question is there any difference in the public content versus if it's offered at a company?
Jess, I'll take that one. This is Carol. There is no difference in the content as far as what's taught during the day. We believe these programs are self-customizing because as pre-work, people are asked to bring in a specific idea or presentation that they will use during the program. So it's somewhat self-customizing. So when they come into the public program, they may each be bringing some different thing in. If it's a corporate program, it would be possible that everybody's going to bring in, for example, a quarterly review. And they're going to use that as the basis for their practice and their refinement of the presentation. But no difference in what's taught.
Thanks, Carol. And another question that came in is, what would you say is the toughest challenge for an instructor to go from the classroom instructor-led training to virtual instructor-led training?
I'll take that one. I'll take that one.
Over to you, Wayne.
Having made that transition, that painful transition myself, it's really unfair that people who are excellent classroom trainers are suddenly kind of thrown into the deep end and expected to be as effective online because it uses different muscles. If you think about what makes a good classroom trainer effective, we are literally, and we've all heard the phrase unconscious competence, we've done this so long that there are 1,000 things that good facilitators do that we literally don't think about. We're scanning the room for feedback. We're, breaking our content up. We're giving people the opportunity to ask questions and respond. Online, we lose a lot of those cues. And our brains are kind of freaking out. And if we aren't entirely sure this is going to work in the first place and we're not comfortable with the technology and we can't see the faces of our learners, there's a lot going on up here. And so it's really critical that whether you're doing your own VILT or you're hiring somebody from an organization like Communispond, that the instructors have the opportunity to not only become expert in the content, but also are familiar and comfortable with presenting via technology, which is a learning curve for everybody, no matter how good the instructor. So making that move to being uncomfortable for a period of time until you get over that hump is really the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Wayne. And we have one more question. So if you are sitting there waiting to get your question over to us, please send that over at this time. So the last question that we have is, do students of EPS Anywhere have access to continued learning after the conclusion of the course? Like, for example, do they have access to the trainer if they need help or have a question?
I'll take that one, Jeff. So, do they have access to reinforcement and assistance after the class? And the answer is absolutely yes. Using the Communispond digital platform, we provide reinforcement tools and other tools such as a mastery checklist. Wayne mentioned the Learn Tos. There's also a tile called Ask the Coach. And what that does is they can put a question in about something that they learned in class, and they type it in, and it will be responded to by a Communispond mentor, so that you'll get an answer back on a skill that you want a little bit of further information about. So yes, they absolutely do.
Thank you, Carol. And that concludes our questions. Thank you so much to everybody that attended, and thank you to our presenters, Wayne and Carol, for giving a wonderful webinar today, and I will see you all at the next webinar.